right, so today we are picking up where we left off last time we took notes. So your note should end with 7.3, problem number 10. We did 1 through 5 the first day. We did 6 through 10 the next day. We had a couple short days in there. Today we are doing 11 through 20. So does everyone know where we are in the notes? All right, so here is number 11. Go ahead and write this down. We'll go over it in just a second. So how do we start these problems? Been a couple days. How do I start?
Okay.
Does this help? Remember, we're looking for the GCF. So first we're going to make a list for 12. And remember, you don't really have to write these because you have a factor sheet. So if you just want to focus in on those numbers on your factor sheet, that should be fine. And no X's in the back. So what's the greatest number they have in common? 6. 6 is in both lists. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull a 6 out to the front, open up a set of parentheses, and then I'm going to divide each of those terms by a 6. What is 12 divided by 6? 2. You had an X. Did you take an X out? No. So the X stays the same. Plus, what is 6 divided by 6? 1. Bless you. Any questions on number 11? None? All right, here's number 12. Take a second to write it down. While you're writing it down, I'll work on the lists off to the side. All right, so what's the biggest number they have in common?
5. Wait.
3's right. 9 doesn't have a 5, so 3's good. One has 2 X's, one has 1 X, so they each have at least one X. Good. So I am going to write 3X in the front. Then I'm going to divide everything by 3X. I'm going to write the leftovers in parentheses. Remember, the word factor just means we're going to rewrite it using multiplication. So it's like undistributing. So we'll go one step at a time. What's 15 divided by 3? 5. You had X squared. You took an X out. So now you have an X. Good. Minus, what's 9 divided by 3?
3.
You had an X. You took out an X.
8.
How many X's do you have left?
0.
None. So don't write any X's. Box that in. If you're like, oh, I don't really know, distribute this back out and see if you end up where you started. So if I do 3X times 5X, I would end up with 15X squared. 3X times 3 gives me 9X, so I know that I have the right answer because it works when I try to do it in reverse. Raise your hand if you have any questions or if you need more time. All right, 13. All right, here are the lists. You remember you have factor sheets. I only provide 1 copy per student, so if you've lost it, go to Google and Google factor sheets, and one will come up. They're all over the internet. Now, if you want to make the list to help you out, that's fine. If you just want to focus in on your factor sheet and make little notes about the variables, that's fine. You can do as much or as little as this part as you need to. So it's kind of up to you. What's the greatest common factor? 2 and x. So I am going to write 2x in the front of my answer, open a set of parentheses, go back and divide everything by 2x and write what you have left over. What is 2x divided by 2x? 1. Anything divided by itself is just a 1. Then we have a plus sign. What's 16 divided by 2? 8. You had an xy, you're taking an x away. So you just have a y. Very good. If you're not sure, distribute that back out. See if you end up where you started. Raise your hand if you need assistance.
So the first number to be divided by GCF?
So the first number, this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I divided this by the greatest common factor. Any number divided by itself is 1. So make sure you write a 1. Some students forget that 1. The 1 just serves as a placeholder so that when you distribute, you still have that term. If you forgot the 1 and just put 8y, when you distributed to check your answer, you'd only have this guy. This would be completely lost. So even though you're taking everything out to the front of the problem, you still need that 1. Other questions? We're going to example 20 today. We're on 14. Here's 14. Notice they're both negatives. We have 1 and 2, 4 x's. We have 1 and 6, 2 and 3, 2 x's. I'll give you a second in case you like those lists. Some people find them helpful to have in their notes. All right, looking at the numbers, what's the biggest number they have in common?
2.
Looking at the variables,
2 x's.
2 x's, which we'd write that as x squared. So the GCF here is 2x squared. Now, they're both negatives. When every term is a negative, it's really nice to pull that negative out front with the GCF. Then everything that's left in the parentheses is positive, so it just looks a little bit neater. So we're actually going to go through and divide by a negative 2x squared. Now, if you did not recognize that doing this on your own, I would not take points off for that. Okay, this is like the absolute most correct way to do it. If you accidentally left the negative in there, it'd be fine. All right, but I'm just going to show you the absolute best way to do it when we're doing examples together. All right, so both of them are being divided by negatives. Negative divided by a negative is a positive, so everything in the parentheses should be a positive or a plus, okay? What is negative 2 divided by negative 2? Positive 1, good. And I had x to the 4th, but I'm taking an x squared out of there, so how many do I have?
X squared.
X squared left over, good. And that is positive because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. If you want to write positive 1 in the front, you can. If you want to just leave it like that, that's fine too. All right, what's negative 6 divided by negative 2?
3.
Positive 3, so I have a plus 3. I had an x squared, I'm taking away an x squared, so how many x's do I have? None. Raise your hand if you have any questions. All right, here's number 15. All right, so 15 we have 1 and 15, 3 and 5, x, y, y. For 20 we have 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5, x, y. So what's the biggest number in common?
5.
And then they both have
X,
xy and xy. So I am going to factor out a 5xy. All right, one step at a time. What's 15 divided by 5? 3. You had an x, you're taking an x away, so how many x's do I have? You don't have any. Okay, y squared, but you're taking one of them out, so now you have y. Plus 20 divided by 5 is 4. You had an x, you're removing an x.
No X's.
No x's. You had a y, you're removing a y.
No Y.
No y's. Distribute that back out if you're unsure, but just by looking at it, I know we did it correctly. Everybody still with me? Raise your hand if you're not. You're not still with me? No? Okay. All right, here's number 16. So I'm going to do 7 x squared, 9 x to the third. So for 7, we have 1 and 7, and then x times x. For number 9, we have 1 and 9, and then x times x times x. So as far as the numbers, what are we looking at? 1, and then for the x's, we have x squareds, right? They both have at least 2 x's. So I'm going to divide everything by x squared, or 1x squared. The 1, I mean, they have it in common, but dividing by 1 doesn't change anything. Multiplying x squared by 1 doesn't change anything. It's already 1x squared. So if you want to write it, great. If you want to forget about it, that's fine too. Because 7 divided by 1 is still 7. So you're not really doing anything, but if that makes you feel better about your GCF, go for it. All right, if I had x squared, but I'm removing an x squared to the front, what do I have?
7.
Just the 7, no x's. Plus, I didn't do anything to the 9. I had x to the third, but I'm taking an x squared out, so now I have
X.
just x to the first, or just x. Good. So again, if you like those extra ones, if you want a 1 here and a 1 here, you can. They're not necessary, so the blue is optional. Just kind of depends what makes you feel good about your answer. Questions? All right, here is number 17. Still factoring the GCF, so we got to find the greatest common factor. I'll start making a list. Alright, so you can see all those factors. Again, you're getting them from a factor sheet, so it should take you a little less time than it takes me. But there you have it. So what's the biggest number they have in common? The 4. What about the variables? We have an xy, an xx, and a yy. So what do they all have? Where's the x back here?
Wait a minute.
Where's the y over here?
Nothing.
Yeah, they don't have anything in common. It kind of looks like they should, but this guy is missing x's, this guy is missing y's. So there's nothing that they all have. So we are just factoring out a 4, which makes it kind of easy because none of the variables are going to change. So you're just worried about the coefficients now. What's 4 divided by 4? 1. So we have 1xy, or just xy, plus, what's 8 divided by 4? 2, and then we have a y squared, minus, what's 12 divided by 4? 3, and then we have an x squared. Good. If you distribute it back out, you'll end up right where you started, so you know your answer is correct. Do you guys have any questions?
You got homework today?
Mm-hmm. All right, here is number 18. Notice the directions have changed. It no longer says factor the GCF. It says simplify. And instead of having an expression that's all multiplied out, we have one that still has the parentheses. So now we're going the other direction. This is what we learned first. This is 7.1 review. Remember that little squared means whatever's in the parentheses is being multiplied by itself twice. So I'm going to write it out like that first. How do I multiply something like this? It's a word that starts with a D. Nope. The other one. Not divide. Divide is when we're factoring. We divide that term out front. We are, yeah, she's making these. Yes, we are distributing each term from the first polynomial to each term in the second polynomial. So basically lots of multiplication. The directions say simplify, so basically get rid of the parentheses, multiply everything out. So what's 2x times 2x? 4x squared, good. What is 2x times negative 6? We're multiplying, so 12x. Same thing here. Now we're distributing the negative 6. What's negative 6 times 2x?
12x.
Negative 12x. And then finally we have negative 6 times negative 6.
Negative 36.
Careful, a negative times a negative is a positive.
36.
Positive 36. Good. We have some like terms here, so you can go ahead and combine those. We have 4x squared minus 24x plus 36. Notice you have a quiz in a couple of days, so if you're like, why is she making us do 7.1 in the 7.3 notes? This is just keeping your brain fresh with what we did before 7.3. 7.3 is kind of overwhelming. It's a whole new concept. This is what we learned first. So first we distributed, then we factored, which is undistributing. So careful here. You got to distribute twice, double distribute. Questions? All right, here is number 19. Again, we are multiplying two polynomials. In this case, they're both binomials. That's where you double distribute. So I am going to multiply through by the x first. What is x times 2x squared? 2x to the third power. Good. What is x times negative 8? Negative 8x or minus 8x. Good. Now we're going to multiply through by the 4. What's 4 times 2x squared? 8x squared. Good. What's 4 times negative 8? Negative 32. Good. Now typically these two are like terms. Are they like terms here? No, this one's an x squared, this one's an x, so it's a little different than the normal double distributing because we're done.
Done.
There's no like terms. Sometimes teachers require you to rearrange them in what's called descending order, so the biggest exponent to the smallest exponent. In that case, you'd have to flip-flop these. I'm fine with this. Don't overcomplicate it, all right? Questions?
This color.
It's more of a comment, but thank you for sharing.
I wasn't saying it to you. The question thing.
Okay. All right, last example. Who's excited?
I gotta spit.
Do what you gotta do. You may run to the restroom if you need to. All right, here is the last one, number 20. All right, so what am I going to do here? Distribute. This is a little different because it's just single distributing. Kind of like what we undid today with the GCF. So you're just going to multiply every term by 2. So that's going to be 2x squared. 14x. And a minus 2 in the back. Raise your hands if there's something you're still struggling with, because I'm about to pass out the homework and then you're on your own. Unless you have questions, then of course I will help you.